This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Okay, so we're playing a rapid fire. I'm gonna ask you some questions and then just tell me what you prefer, really fast, what comes to mind.
Yep, absolutely.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Beach vacation or city adventure?
Beach.
Early bird or night owl?
Is both an acceptable answer for that?
I guess so. I don't know how you can be both. You just get no sleep.
I've become an early bird over the years, but as I mentioned earlier, I like coffee. So coffee helps me be both of those things.
Yeah. Netflix binging or reading a book?
I would say reading a book, and I think my wife and daughter would agree because I binge watch shows really slow.
Pizza or tacos?
Toughest one yet. I love pizza.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs, 100%. I have two of them, 100% dogs.
Texting or phone calls?
Texting.
Karaoke or game night?
Karaoke. I've got a great story about that if we get to it.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Okay. And dream city that you want to explore right now?
Let's say Charleston, South Carolina.
That's so specific. What's in Charleston, South Carolina?
So my wife and I have some friends who live there, but I like those kind of charming old South U.S. cities. So
like the
that
ones
one in particular has a lot of that, and the beach is there. So it's a double bonus.
I'm not American, so like I'm kind of lost on a lot of these things. So I'm curious. Like I'm the context of I've always wanted to go to an American small town. The vibe, like the ones I see in movies. Like I see them in movies all the time. Like I don't know if you watch Twilight, like Forks.
Yes.
That's giving like that thing of like they're eating at this diner, and I'm always like I'm always curious if that truly is the American experience. Do they have yellow school buses?
As someone, so I actually do live in a small town in the state of West Virginia. And yes, there's some similarities to it. Is it as wonderful as the movies make it seem?
Probably not.
But yeah, it absolutely there is that you go to a store or the grocery store or whatever, and you're going to run into it's going to take you twice as long as you want because you're going to be running into people and you have to stop and talk to them. Yes.
That's so sweet though. I like that. Guys, welcome to Fully Managed. You guys have already kind of got to know our guest for today. His name is Johnathan Bentz. He works for direct online marketing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you nailed it.
Good. And you guys know the drill. We talk about marketing, talk about business tips. We assist you guys with your business journeys. You know me, the host. I'm Penji's partnership coordinator, Daniela. And we have a great show planned for you today. So, hey, how are you? Bentz, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing awesome. And like I said, I'm glad we talked about this just briefly before the show started, but I'm glad we moved to a last name first basis so fast. I think that's one of my favorite things to do with clients or with just people that I come across in business in general.
Like I'm Latina. We're really big on nicknames, so it's really easy for me to just go into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We usually like will call people by really strange nicknames or last names, especially if their last name is like kind of weird.
Yeah.
People will go just into that. I don't know why. It's like a cultural thing, I think.
Yeah,
But
there's definitely one of the interesting things. So that's inside direct online marketing, which we also call DOM for short. So you're welcome to call it that for short, just to make things easy. But
that sounds easier.
what is weird is when I come across family members in other lines of business, and we have if we're having meetings and they're having meetings with our team,
Mhm.
my family members or whatever hear my teammates at Dom just constantly call me by my last name. They don't it's it's jarring for them, right? Because their last name is the same as well, but people in their company, everybody's on a first name basis. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I can relate to that, and it's something inside of our culture at Dom where there is a lot of last name first with our teammates.
That's really cool. Like I think names are very particular to cultural backgrounds. I just like also just in general relationships outside of the cultural stuff. I think it more has like you said, like company culture, relationships with people. I lived in Asia for a while in Taiwan, and okay,
Okay.
they speak Chinese there for context for people listening that don't know. They usually say your entire name. So, like, for example, your name is Johnathan Bentz. So they'll call you Johnathan Bentz all the time. Like, hello, Johnathan Bentz. How are you doing, Johnathan Bentz? How was your day? Because in Chinese, your name is only 3 characters, and they'll usually pronounce like your last name and your first name. And then they'll move to like your first name, like the 2 characters that actually make the name, if
Yeah.
there's a lot of like trust. But they do that. It's like they'll just say the full name. And so I got used to that. When I went to Taiwan, they changed my name to like they gave me a Chinese version of my name because it was impossible for people to pronounce something in Spanish. Um, and they would just always call me like the whole thing.
That's interesting. I
Yeah.
usually the only time I've ever had to do that, or even something close to that, is like when we were in school, or even in the case of inside Dom as well, where you have multiple people with the same first name. And so, yeah, for instance, we have 3 Matts on our staff, direct
Okay.
online marketing, right? And so now each one of them has a nickname or has a last name that we call them. But, for a while, you may have to call one of them Matt H or Matt P,
Yeah, I know that.
or Matt K, right?
Yeah,
Instead of you're right, instead of just Matt, right?
especially with common names, that happens. I know. Um,
Yeah.
it happened a lot. It happens a lot too in Spanish because we have like a lot of similar names. But I'm so excited for today's episode. We were not going to talk about names, but the conversation just really got interesting.
Yeah, sure.
The topic today is actually on keyword intent and SEO. And Ben's here is a professional. He knows a lot about it. So you can give us actually a lot of great tips. A lot of our viewers are business owners who are kind of trying to learn about marketing,
Okay.
learn about all of this. So I think it would be really great. But to get the ball rolling, get us a little bit into the marketing stuff. For people listening who might actually not know or be familiar with this, can you explain what keyword intent actually means in that context of SEO?
Yeah, absolutely. So with keyword intent, what we're actually talking about isn't necessarily the words that you're typing into the search box. Instead, what we're talking about is how Google understands the behavior of searchers and what they want to do when they type in a certain keyword term. So, you could an example of this would be if you looked up if you looked up pizza, just in general, if you looked that up, there's going to be recipes. There's going to be info.
Restaurants? No.
Right. There's going to be a list of restaurants, but it's going to be a keyword. There's going to be with that keyword phrase, there's going to be different results based on what Google knows about you and how you use the search engine. That keyword result will look different for you, Daniela, than it may look for me, than it may look for somebody else that we don't know because of our own tendencies. But over time, as a default, Google then starts to learn, okay, the majority of users, when they're searching for
Pizza.
or whatever the topic is, we predict that they're going to want to see restaurants. They're going to want to see recipes. They're maybe less likely to want to see a Wikipedia article about the history of pizza being, pizza as a food being created.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I just Googled pizza because I was curious, and I got like the nearest Pizza Hut to me.
Yeah.
And then just other restaurants in my area that sell pizza. That's like my search. My Google search was just pizza restaurants.
Then
Search for a lot of pizza restaurants, I guess.
making a bold assumption here, you must use Google to help make decisions for where you're going to, like a lot of us do. You must use that with a much higher frequency. You must use that for making decisions of where to go to eat, not necessarily how to make, right? Not necessarily in your kitchen if you're getting ready to make something yourself.
Yeah, I'll usually Google something, like where I can have a pizza. Like if I wanted to have pizza, it's probably what my knee-jerk reaction would be to Google pizza places, where to go. So that makes, yeah.
Absolutely.
The other question that I have for you is, SEO, and I think what you just explained is really interesting because I think it's personally, I'm not an expert. This is genuinely just like my impression, so you can feel free to correct me. But I feel like it's changing so much with the introduction of AI, and specifically, I think things like ChatGPT, and even like Gemini, that is Google's AI bot, right? But
Yeah.
I just feel like the other day my sister told me like, "Can you search this on ChatGPT?" And I was kind of like, "That's so weird," because I'm used to people asking me, "Can you Google this?"
Right.
And then now it's become search for it on ChatGPT. And I think a lot of people are moving to asking ChatGPT more than Google. Um, and even if they're using Google, I think the idea of using like a bot and then asking the bot and then having the bot like collect the information and give it to you in that form is kind of the way that things are changing towards, moving towards. This is how I feel like things are going. Is that affecting how, because I would assume it affects SEO, because now it's not the same putting it into a question on ChatGPT than Googling the word pizza on Google. But I kind of want to know if that prediction is correct, or if I'm completely off the mark.
Yeah. So that was a lot. There's a lot. That's an onion. There's a lot to unpack.
Complicated questions.
Right. So we can take one step back there and, just one step back on that topic around users searching with alternatives to Google. Yes, that is happening. Now, business owners need to know that while that is happening, it's not happening at such a high frequency that you should be focusing on a different place than Google. So Google is still the lion's share of search activity that's happening. Like I said, people are using ChatGPT. People are using Gemini to kind of understand things and get recommendations before they then go to Google or directly go to a website. So there is some of that behavioral stuff that's changing, but it's not it's not disrupting Google to the point where there's a risk that Google's not going to be the #1 search engine. So we're still pretty far off from being in that type of digital environment.
Yeah, where you have to change it completely, I guess.
Yeah, right. Where SEO agencies aren't going to be Google first SEO agencies, and they're going to be looking at something else. No, we're still, don't worry, we're still in a market where Google is the driving force. Now, saying all of that, the way people are using Google today is different. For a lot of your listeners, viewers, their traffic trends in Google, or their traffic trends in analytics for their websites, may look a lot different today than they did last year. Because for years, maybe even decades now, Google's been around that long.
Yeah.
SEOs have been telling companies things like content is king,
Yeah.
or things like, he who has the most links wins. Like, there have been statements like that out in the market where even giving recommendations, like if you answer every single question that your clients have, then ultimately your site is going to win because you're going to be getting more traffic coming in. And what we're seeing today, and this plays into that keyword intent conversation as well, but what we're seeing over the last several months is, for companies who for years have relied on having the most content, the most articles about topics, maybe losing traffic, and maybe losing traffic in a way that likely may never come back. Because if Google can get your information, and they can, and somebody's just looking up general knowledge or general information about something, they're going to pull your content out of your website and just give it as an AI answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. As opposed to
Making
giving somebody a link to your website and telling them to go to your website.
Yeah, I think that's actually I was gonna say that. Like, I feel like Google has become so much more optimized for that. Where like I will ask a direct question and then it will literally put that question in the Google search, the answer, and
Yeah.
it pull from somewhere, which is what ChatGPT does too. So now, yeah, you don't have to go and like, because I do feel like when I would like search for answers beforehand, I would have to, I guess, scroll and go into articles and read and figure out where that answer was. It
Yes.
took more time, and now it's been a lot more like, just kind of there.
Right. And so what we're seeing, so two behaviors that we're seeing change. One is people are doing searches and they're getting answers, and they're trusting Google. So you may remember a story from last year. We're talking a lot about pizza today, but where journalists, at the initial rollout of AI overviews in Google results, there was a result of where Google was telling people to use glue to make cheese stick to pizza.
Also,
Okay.
I
Right. And so there were some journalists who took it too far, reporters who took it too far, and literally put glue on their pizza and tried it. Right.
why would you do that? It's obvious that it's like a bad.
People
Yeah.
like to have fun with search results, right? Or with AI, when AI says crazy things. So, but it's now evolved. It's gotten smarter. It's evolved, and it's more nuanced and sophisticated now, to where it's not going to recommend to you that you put glue on pizza. But a lot of people, that broader point of whatever the chatbot tells them is what they're now going to assume as fact, or as
the truth.
the truth, right? That's going to happen. And so it takes away, whether to think back to your grade school or university teacher, where you had to show your sources.
Yeah.
Even if they don't show their sources, people are still going to receive that information and just take that information like it was provided at an expert level and move on. So we're seeing that behavior trend which there's opportunity there, but we're also seeing a behavior trend with users taking that information from the search engine, and when they can see sources or when companies are recommended things like that, when they're getting that information, then they're behaving differently. They're going directly to a website, or they're doing a search for, so if you ask for companies and it gives you a list of 3 to 5 companies, what's the next action you're going to take? You're not then going to search for best pizza restaurants again. No, you're going to get 3 options, and you're going to get, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, and Domino's.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do? You're going to Google the ones that the chatbot or the AI overview said are the best, and then go find that in your area instead of doing a more generic search and then coming in.
That makes sense. Although I feel like, I mean, I'm thinking of this purely from like the user as me, like me on Google. I do feel like a lot of times I have to go in and look for sources, even if Google will just like pop the answer right on top.
Yep.
But to me the other day, this is kind of like an embarrassing thing to admit, but I watch a lot of anime. I was watching this one show and I didn't understand if these 2 characters got together or not, right? Like I'm towards the end of the show and I'm like, did they become a couple or not? I'm confused. So I go in Google and I ask, like, did so and so and so and so get together at the end of this show?
Okay.
Canon couple. That's my Google search. And Google said like immediately it pops that answer on top and it says yes. But I was like, that doesn't make, because I was Googling because I wasn't sure. It didn't seem like it. So I was like, how, I wanted to know why, right? Like I'm like, okay, but how? What did I miss that I didn't understand? And so I like the answer was not enough. And so I keep like reading and I'm like, okay, where did this thing pull the yes from?
Sure.
Then I go into the article and it was an opinion, like people like it was someone who wrote this article and they were writing a review of the show and their opinion was that they got together, but it wasn't a definitive yes or no, which was what I was looking for, or like an actual answer from the author, if that makes sense. It was more just like what this person interpreted. And so I had to continue to look for more stuff to figure out whether or not they were a canon couple. They were not, by the way. It was kind of like open-ended and it was up to interpretation, I guess.
Yeah.
But, like you said, like I did have to go in a little bit more and search for the sources. I couldn't take that as an absolute truth because I was like, clearly just pull the information from whatever article had more clicks and then put it on top of my search.
Right. Well, and that's you're leaning in a little bit. There's a business application to the situation that you just described, right? So for you, it was, I was binge watching a show and I wanted to know the end. By the way, offline, I want to know which show that is because my daughter watches a lot of shows like that. I'd be interested to see if there's coming around there. So, but related to that, like common user situation, right? So what we're seeing, and this also goes back to keyword intent, for companies who have lived and died by SEO, and they're seeing that decline in traffic. Where they're most likely seeing the decline in traffic is with blog articles. It could be old blog articles. It could be blog articles or glossaries, right? Information that people no longer need to come to your website to get information. Google's just going to give it to them. Now you may get that additional benefit of credibility, but you're not going to get the traffic direct, linear from Google. So what options do you have? For us, we've been encouraging our clients to lean into certain content types or certain pages on their website where we're seeing better engagement, or we're seeing Google showcase pages that drive engagement, drive conversion, where people want to go deeper than just getting the answer from Google. So you talked about it in the case of wanting to know the truth about a TV show. That's just one use case. The business use case would be that you still need to have the most information and the most relevant recent information about your products, services, locations on your website, so that you give people a reason to come in and click, as opposed to just taking whatever the AI machines give them and moving on.
That makes sense, because then if you just get the AI, that's it. That's where the experience ends. But what I described, I mean, I had to do a lot of research, and I ended up reading the whole article where they pull. So whoever wrote this, they got the traction from me, and I'm assuming other people who had the same question also did it too.
Who's probably. So, and related to that, your content strategy. So clients of, viewers of this pod or whatever, if they have content calendars, or they're working with companies that provide them content calendars, the type of content that you put in there may need to change as you're finishing up your plans for the rest of the year. Because it was not uncommon, even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, for a great SEO strategy to be a 5,000 word piece of content on I wouldn't do what is pizza, but I might do what is graphic design, and then go through and you talk about each one of the unique elements of graphic design, and you spin off to a page. We've all seen these pillar pages or power pages, right? These
WebMD, when you Google an illness, and then
right.
there.
WebMD, just because of the credibility and the authority that they have online, their pages are still going to rank, and people are still going to go into those pages. But you're right. Those core, what is pages were very common, and they were common whether it was healthcare, they were common whether it was software and technology, they were common B2B services. Every industry had pages like that. Instead of recommending pages like that today, because like we said earlier, Google's just going to process all that content and feed it to somebody, and they don't necessarily need to go to your website.
Yeah.
What we're encouraging with content strategy, and with if article creation and content generation content marketing is still going to be a core pillar of what you do to attract new business opportunities, we're suggesting a lot more that you provide research, that you provide trend data, that you provide other types of, or you provide more detailed comparisons, more detailed ratings and reviews of products, to try to for those use cases where people need to go deeper and really are in the middle of that decision-making stage, not at the very beginning where they're just going to get just a basic understanding from your piece of content.
I think that totally makes sense. I'm guessing keyword intent has always been important in SEO strategies, but I'm guessing now it's kind of more important. And I'm assuming businesses have to adapt to that, which is kind of what we've talked about the whole time. But for a business owner, how do you, especially if what they've been doing is, traditional forms of SEO for their whole life, or just in general, not the most technologically a savvy person, whatever the case may be, helping the person actually introduce all of this into their own SEO strategies, into their own marketing, and make it kind of successful.
So the first way I would recommend that you do that is by answering questions that your clients have, and not questions that if a client is coming to you asking what, at the very beginning stages of what something is, maybe if you are on the cutting edge of technology, maybe that's happening for you, or there's jargon in your industry that people are hearing a lot
They don't know.
that's emerging, right? Yeah, maybe there is the situation where you would still want to generate that content for that. But the actual topics that I'm thinking about and that I'm talking about are some of those really specific pain points where you can build trust with your prospects. And so it may not be, an example of that may not be from our industry, may not be what is pay-per-click marketing or what is uh, SEO, but how, in contrast to that, the piece of content may be what can I do when I see a competitor bidding on my brand name in Google Ads? Can I do any? Yeah. How do I stop that? Most businesses don't like that, right? When they see somebody else running ads on their brand name. So what options do they have? Conveniently, we have content like that on directom.com. So if you're interested in that, hate to say it, but you should go check it out. But in that case, that content like that, where people really need to understand a more nuanced problem, and you're giving them at least their options, or giving them a solution, is going to be more valuable and probably something that's going to drive somebody to click instead of just going and getting the answer straight from ChatGPT or Google itself.
I think especially if the answer is very straightforward, like you said, like, what is SEO? I mean, it's just going to say search engine optimization. And then that's it. And that's enough because that was the question. So like,
Right.
it totally makes sense having to go in. I recall experiences of me having to do that with like help with, I guess, troubleshooting sometimes with stuff. That happens a lot, but I feel like that's where you really have to go in. There's this one time I was trying to get my Instagram password fixed. I was having issues. I had to like read so many articles from like Instagram and Instagram users to figure out because like nobody was answering this question. Nobody had my problem. And it was like, is there nobody in the world that has had the same password problem that I'm having right now? It was just like, and I had to really, really like dig. I ended up going into this really old, like 4-year-old Reddit post to see someone talking about it. So I like, like you said,
And this,
data space, I think.
well, and it's interesting that you mentioned you ended up on Reddit.
Oh yeah, Reddit.
So one of the best, right. So Reddit, I saw a ranking recently that Reddit is now like one of the top. I just want to say top 3 because I didn't physically look at the list, but like one of the top 3 most trafficked websites on the internet. So Reddit, and for inspiration for companies that are like, okay, well, if I'm not writing this this top of the highest, most searched for keyword term, give me a really long article about just everything that there is to know about the topic. If I'm not doing that, where do I go to get inspiration? Where do I go to get ideas? And the Reddit certainly is a great place to do that.
Yeah, people are a lot of questions there too.
Right. Yeah, it is. And there, Quora, there's other platforms, Just Answer. There's other platforms like that that are question centric.
Yeah.
But if you can get a sense of not just what the questions are, but questions that you have the ability to provide a solution to the problem, then that would be an art, or you have an informed opinion on the topic, then that's probably a good piece of content for you to go into depth about. in your content calendar or in your content strategy, as opposed to, all right, here's my keyword checklist for the month, and I don't have an article about this topic or this topic or this topic, so I've got to write these 3.
Yeah, no, that totally makes. I still feel like on Reddit, a lot of public opinion, you can see it on how people feel about certain things. I mean, definitely got a lot of negative things too. I don't a lot of trolls, a lot of stuff like that. But I feel like in general, I feel like on Reddit, I can really get a sense of how people are feeling about, like, especially with like things like technology. It's like, I don't like this update on this thing, or like I
Uh-huh.
am having trouble using it, and then a lot of people are commenting like me too. And it's like a whole thing. And then I feel like what you describe is like that's where I would come in if I had like knowledge on it to be like, oh, this is what to do with the new update.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, and you can and you can do that. You can certainly go into Reddit, right, and be an engaged user on Reddit. But I think there's opportunity, there's untapped opportunity in almost any line of business. Whether it's unanswered threads on Reddit. I've posted threads on Reddit before that got no answers or got very few. And we've all seen questions and answers on Reddit that have nothing, to your point, nothing but snark and troll.
Threads are huge right now.
Yeah. So if you can take inspiration from that and provide let's just say a more helpful answer, or debunk myths that you're seeing there, then that's an opportunity for your brand to stand out. And if your brand is standing out and your brand is also building trust along the way, then it's a lot easier to then convert that traffic. The content's harder to generate. It's not something that you can just give to an article generator and get back. But when you create it, it's going to work harder for you over time instead of, providing you short-term gain, but long-term little to no return.
I think that's great. And unfortunately, we are running out of time. So I want to say that this is a great note to end the podcast on. I've actually personally learned a lot. I think you taught me a lot about SEO, and I'm just telling you all these random stories of me being on the internet. So it's been so great to have you. But I do want to give you a space right now before we finish the podcast to tell everybody where they can go find you. You mentioned a little bit that there was a lot of articles that we could read at them, but you want to plug anything, you want to say anything, floor is yours right now.
Appreciate that. So absolutely would love anyone checking out this episode to find me on LinkedIn. I'm Johnathan Bentz on LinkedIn. Not difficult to find. So you see this face, you type my name in, you see this face, that's me. The real deal. Additionally, yeah, I do create content on occasion on directom.com. So happy to have everybody go check that out. And then if you are in the PR space, coming up in May, myself and the founder of Direct Online Marketing are going to be doing some seminars through an organization called the Event Nexus. So I'm sure you'll see that if you go to directom.com. There's information about that on our website. You'll also, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to give you those details, or you'll see it in my feed. So check me out there and let's connect and keep the conversations going for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I will be adding the links to your LinkedIn, to the website on the description of this video so that people can easily access them.
Appreciate it.
Guys, I will see you all on the next episode. And Bentz, thank you so much for being here.
Daniela, thanks so much for having me. Take care.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.